So I think we sent out the background on obviously you and Palantir. Palantir has kind of a notorious reputation of no one really knowing what they do. Being one of the largest companies that no one knows what they do.
It's bigger than I thought it would be, especially for no one knowing what it does,
Right, exactly. It's the 22nd largest public company, and it's a company that you co-founded when you were 21. So obviously it's been, a major part of your life and probably quite a wild ride to go from zero to where it was. And so would love to hear, maybe you can share a bit about the genesis of the company.
Sure.
Walk us through the early days.
Sure. Well, I guess the background. So I grew up in Silicon Valley, and a lot of my friends and I were math and chess competitors, not very popular on the social scene, but we had a lot of smart friends. And when I was at Stanford computer science, I was at PayPal because I saw a lot of the people I admired going to PayPal. They rejected me my first year, but they let me in eventually. And the big challenge at PayPal, you guys might have heard of, was that the Russian and Chinese mafia were stealing all of our money. So we had about 8 big competitors. And if you want to send a payment online, if we ask you too much about yourself, you don't want to use PayPal. It's annoying. If we don't ask you enough about yourself, then you can go to 7-Eleven here, and the person behind the counter might be in a bad mood, and they could write down your number, and they could sell it to the Russians online, and the Russians would aggregate thousands of these things, run them through our system, take out the money, and then you would get something saying, PayPal, $200 charge. You say, I didn't send $200 through PayPal. You charge it back, the credit card company refunds you, takes it from us. So we were losing $7 or $8 million a month, and so PayPal was very unprofitable at the time, and we had to figure out how to stop the bad guys. So make a long story short, AI wasn't quite what it was back then. We still did a lot of AI, but we also built these systems I think we had a team in Omaha, actually, that we made our investigators. A lot of our smartest customer support people, we give them systems, and we built this technology to investigate, cut down the fraud just enough to make it profitable. We're able to sell to eBay as a win. And at the time, I got to know a bunch of these Secret Service and FBI guys because they were the ones who had to arrest people for us. And this was a whole new world to them. This was like 2000. So they'd never actually done cybercrime or arrest people online. So it's kind of fun. It's like all of us kind of, it's cops and robbers or James Bond or whatever you want to think about it. It's fun to catch the bad guys. So we started advising them and helping them. And then 9/11 happened, and we watched as the U.S. government spent billions of dollars on very backward stuff that was way behind what Silicon Valley was doing. And we realized, wow, there's a duty here for our nation. We need to take the best and brightest of Silicon Valley and upgrade the investigative systems of our country. And so that was the initial impetus is we're going to take a functional tech culture, build these systems. And I guess to make a long story short, it turns out the types of problems we had to solve to build these analytical systems and information systems, you actually had to map out all of the data in a way to understand, we called it a dynamic ontology, understand how the data could talk to each other, and then you had to map out workflows. And so we had all these ontologies of workflows. And then it turns out by doing that, not only was it useful for government stuff, it was useful for a lot of companies to take their data and their workflows. And the types of problems we solved made it very easy to then put AI on top of it when AI came along. And so Palantir was probably already about a $20, $25 billion company. It might be a $30 billion company today, except maybe a little better, but the AI came along, and it turns out that it's so good at helping people use AI that's given it this 10x over the last 5 years. And it's very impressive. I'm not running it anymore. It's very impressive to see. A lot of people I built it with and hired are still running it today. I hired most of the first 200 people, and I'm really proud of the team. We were ranked #1 in Silicon Valley for talent. I think that's also a big theme right now, as it turns out these really strong engineering cultures with the really top talent have been very good at deploying AI very quickly in these contexts, and so they've made the best of that. And one more thing I'll say, because you asked about the valuation. When we started the company, we would hire this talent, and I had a little chart. I think this is a good thing to do with top talent. You say, listen, we want you to have a big piece of the company. You get a trade-off. We prefer people have lower salaries that they could get, but they're taking a piece of the company. And here's 3 options, more equity or less salary, how much you need. And here's what your options might be worth if we do different amounts. So you'd say, okay, if with this much dilution, if we're worth $2 billion, here's what your shares are worth, right? So you have a table, and in the bottom of the table, I think the highest one I would do the first couple of years was, here's what your shares would be worth if we get to $5 billion. And people are like, Joe, you can't say it's worth $5 billion. That's unrealistic. So it's very satisfying for me today, after being shamed for showing them the $5 billion outcome, that it turns out it's possible to make these things get pretty big.
I'm sure they're pretty glad they took that trade-off.
Now they're all my friends are too rich to work anymore, which is annoying. But so now we got
you need new friends to work with.
Exactly. Come on, guys. I have them teaching at my new university. They'll help with that, but they won't work anymore.
You talk a lot about defense, and there's a lot of common threads between a lot of the things you've backed from or started from Palantir to Anduril. What is it about defense, about war in general that interests you? Why back that? Why focus on it?
Yeah, well, we did Palantir. It was very counterintuitive. You weren't supposed to do this. Works well enough. I'll just do this. You weren't supposed to do defense back then. People thought it was like, why aren't you doing social media? That was the big thing. You're supposed to be. They were very annoyed I was stealing talent from social media. The thing about defense that's interesting, there's a team here. We're backing Stack Health and healthcare as well. I was just with Alex Frommeyer, who's a great entrepreneur here. The thing about those two industries.
That's for those who know him.
Yeah, he crushed that company here. It's his second company. We're helping him build it together and backing him, and a really strong team already. But I think those industries are both similar actually in the sense that they both have like lots of really weird distortions and regulatory barriers so that the actual ultimate product is like broken, right? It's like if there's possibilities to just be way better than what's there because it's set up in a way that it's kind of kept people out. It's like the animals that evolved on the Galapagos Islands. If you like connected them to the mainland animals would go and crush them, but they can't get there. And so it's like if you could actually get into the space with talent, you could be so much better than what's there because of the artificial barriers. And it's very satisfying for me because you're just fixing things that are just so broken. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't be great to do it, but it's like takes a lot of persistence sometimes to break in and to figure out how to do that. So as an entrepreneur, I like solving problems and fixing things that are broken. So it's just a very broken area. And then on top of that, of course, so we built Palantir. Elon was building SpaceX at the time after PayPal. He's an old friend. And those were like the two companies that kind of broke through and became big companies despite the primes trying to lock everyone down. Because you guys know what the primes are. Does people know defense in this crowd?
I think it'd be.
So basically what happened is America had the most competitive and advanced defense ecosystem in the world. Probably made 70 or 80 big companies, and we were just dominant. And then the Cold War ended and the budget was going down, so they kind of merged these 80 companies together to become about 7 primes, really. So there's 7 big companies that are effectively a merger of all these other companies. And then these things became like these very bureaucratic arms of the government, and like everything went through them, and they just spent a lot of their effort to make sure they just locked it down and no one else could play, because this is their realm to own those profits. And then that was the 90s, and then the Silicon Valley tech bubble got going, and there's a lot of great things happening. So a lot of the computer science talent left because it was more interesting to be in Silicon Valley. And we've seen in the last 20 years, like the best engineering talent has not really gone into the primes. It's mostly about them locking things down and protecting their area, not about them actually really truly innovating as much as they should be. And so Palantir was able to do things much, much better and eventually break through. Both Palantir and SpaceX actually had to sue the government, which sounds crazy. I don't like suing anyone. But the government was illegally working with them to block things that were clearly 10 times better and clearly hiding data. So in both cases, it was like a scandal. They had to, when you've seen how SpaceX is done now, of course, right? It's just clearly cheaper, clearly better. So we had to sue to break through. Because of that, you now have Anduril then got going. And then what happened, the reason we got Anduril started, 3 people who started Anduril used to work for me at Palantir, and it's my friend Palmer. And I think the reason it got going is A, there's a big gap where it's broken and needed to be done. And B, a lot of us realized, wait a second, Xi Jinping is actually like a crazy communist who actually does want to be a bad guy and confront us. China's not going to open up and be our friend. And he's making a lot of our friends who we knew from the tech world have their best engineers work for the PLA, work for building new weapons. So he said, wow, this is scary. We have a bad guy building really advanced weaponry. We have our space not hiring any of our best engineering people we know. We better get back into this and actually fix this. And so that's what Anduril did. And then that was kind of the mission, then start a few more based on possibilities we saw that were necessary.
Do you see, talking about China a bit, backing enough defense companies to start to see a bit of a trend? Are you betting on war in the future? And I think it's relevant for this audience because there's a lot of defense production in this region. We have a military base nearby, and there's a need for manufacturing in general in the region to become sort of upskilled if that is happening.
So
where are we going?
I'd say I'm betting on being able to achieve peace is the most important thing. 20% of what I've invested is in defense, and it's true that when there's war in the world, you make money on that, which is a very dangerous incentive. But I do think I spent a lot of time at the Department of War just yesterday. A bunch of my friends are very involved there now, but I think it is true. If si vis pacem para bellum, if you want peace, prepare for war. The way to not have war with China is to be so dominant and so great and have our stuff be so good that they're afraid of us. They know they'll lose face. China does not want to lose face. They do not want to lose battles. If they keep advancing and we don't advance, that would lead to war being much, much more likely. And so what's necessary is that we do stay ahead of them in order for them to be scared of us. I want to terrify our enemies, and I want them not to want to fight with us. And so that's the goal of what we're doing as leaders in defense. That said, Obviously, these are companies and you want to make them profitable. I think the way we do that is we outcompete the old broken ways of doing things, and we convince DC, which means convincing the House Armed Services Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the generals, the admirals, the administration, the national security apparatus, that these new things are better. And we've gone a long way towards doing that the last 5 years. And the key thing is we're just trying to get them to give us fair competitions. It used to be you'd have a competition, yours would be way better, and you still wouldn't get in for the next 8 years. We're trying to shift it so there's a competition. If you win, you get the funding, not the big giant company that sucks that you're doing things 10 times better than. And so that's all we're asking, and I do think it's moving that way. So I'm very positive on this current Department of War. It's been going the right way for a while now.
So how can we, this room, support with that? I mean, you're in a room full of operators, business owners in logistics, manufacturing, some of the larger people in the defense supply chain.
I love it. I mean, this is America's Heartland for building these things. A lot of our companies are coming here and are partnering with you in building. So I think supporting these companies, I think coming up with ways that you see things that are suboptimal, like how can we do better? I mean, that's really what entrepreneurship is to me. Is you see something, you say, wait a second, you've been doing this way for 30 years, but now based on this new thing I see, we could do this much better. We could have a better result. We'd have a less expensive result. I think that's all of our job. If you're smart and you have opinions on things and you figure it out and you talk to other friends and you go and build and fix it. And I think a lot of us building these companies who are working here, if you see things we're doing that are not optimal, let's talk about it, let's fix it, let's build better things.
There's clearly a lot of opportunity to invest in AI. There's a lot of hype as well.
There's a big wave.
There is. For the business owners that are in the audience, how do you think about, whether it's for Anduril or other companies, how do you think about the right time to go all in on AI automation investment? The ability to spend millions or tens or hundreds of millions of dollars today on retooling, on reorganizing.
Yeah, I think it's different for a new company or a new thing versus an existing legacy company, right? Because I think sometimes you're doing the new company with this AI thing because you think it's so much better, and that becomes like a big driving point of the founding of the company. I'm involved in dozens of companies. Unfortunately, the majority of them are still in California, which really annoys me, that are growing very, very quickly, creating new ways of using artificial intelligence, right? I think it's there's $5 trillion of wages right now in America service economy, and I think like 2 to 2.5 trillion, 40-50% are in areas where we've already seen you could at least double the productivity, if not triple or quadruple, right? So this is going to affect everything. This is a huge productivity wave, may even end up being as big as the second industrial revolution. If you think about from 1870 to 1900, the average person in the working class or middle class, it wasn't really middle class, it was the average person in the working class was more than twice as wealthy in real terms by the end of that one generation, just because of that industrial revolution. We may be lucky enough to get similar productivity growth right now. I think this is how you get that golden age that we're talking about in DC. But in terms of like what you should be doing in legacy companies, which I think is the question for this audience, I think the goal is like you focus on pain points and focus on solutions. Like don't start with the technology, don't start with the shiny object. That's a terrible idea. Start with your actual business. And there's like, maybe it's quoting, maybe it's invoicing, maybe it's scheduling, customer support. But pick these areas that are pain points, that have friction, where it looks like AI can do better, right? I think use off the shelf. Do not try to build your own tech team. That's crazy. Like maybe eventually you do that, but if you're a legacy business, it's not your business to create new AI things. There's tons of off the shelf things to use. I think your goal should be to augment your workers. I think the framework is that the workers should have to spend less time doing like boring, repeatable tasks and more time doing higher value work. So I think that's what AI's job is. You pick these areas where there's friction and you automate the boring parts and let the worker have more time for higher value work or for other things you could use them for. A lot of it's paperwork layer, right? A lot of it is invoicing and compliance and all this stuff. I think that's where we're starting with this paperwork layer. And then I think what you want to do is you want to pilot it. You want to choose one area, have a tiger team, have a small group, choose one small area, prove the ROI, get that right, and then you scale it. I mean, another thing that we have spent a lot of time on, if you're choosing an area, you want an area with good data hygiene, right? So sometimes before you can use AI, you actually have to digitize your business, because in many of these cases, your business, it may not have been worth it to digitize before. It may now be worth it to digitize that area of your business in order, have it be on the computer, have it be there in order that you can tiger team it and go after it and apply a tool. But those are some of the ideas I'd use. But again, you're starting with the pain points, don't start with the technology is my bias anyway.
Absolutely. Have you seen a lot of, our core focus being, matching the pain points to the technologies, the people that are living the pain points are here. I'm curious in your take on sort of the opportunity to bring industry and tech builders together. I mean, you sort of sit in the middle of that, right? Like you're involved in companies with physical manufacturing, with Anduril, with other businesses, obviously on the tech side as well.
Well, Palantir has done a lot, obviously, to power Anduril and Saronic and all our defense manufacturers for like large manufacturers, and that kind of basically, I think these old ERP systems didn't really have the intelligence to see and map out and how if one thing changes, what other things change. Palantir is very good at that. I think it's probably for a larger company, though. I'm not sure. It depends. You have to be pretty big before it to be worth it, I think. You know, they're trying to get better, so it's even easier for smaller companies. But I think for any company where there's the paperwork stuff or where there's like the different kind of friction on different very defined workflows, it's not that hard to just ROI, you know, do AI in those areas with off-the-shelf things. There's so many super fast-growing off-the-shelf companies right now. You can kind of test them for these areas, see which one makes sense.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned labor a bit. We're in a bit of an interesting in-between time, it seems, where there's labor shortages today, especially in a lot of these industrial areas.
Yeah.
But every headline we're seeing is that no one's going to have a job in the future, and you know,
it's a very funny thing, to be accused of like putting everyone out of a job while at the same time that we need to help companies actually get everything done.
Right.
It's very funny side.
I'm curious on your take on, you know, one, is that true, and two, for the folks in this room, how do you thread that? How do you address the issue now without? Do you build a training program?
100% we need better training programs in our country. I mean, I think the thing we're lacking is frankly like culture and agency and people who want to work hard. I think if you want to work hard in America, it's not that hard. At the same time, it's our job to make it even easier to have and when you do these training programs, most of what the government does ends up being very sloppy. I think if you make them accountable, where you only fund them based on their outcomes, we've seen that works a hell of a lot better. Because you know, in Texas, we changed all of our high-end vocational schools to be funded based on the salaries coming out, and the salaries doubled over the next 7 years because they were fully accountable to that. And they all of a sudden the board's saying, crap, what are we going to do? Let's better figure out what skills to teach, what businesses to partner with. So I was actually just with my friend Vivek over here, who I hear is very likely to be the next governor here, and we're very aligned on these types of things. I think there's a lot of stuff like that we can push forward to align it. So yeah, I think for AI to work, it should be about the American worker and helping them. But like you said, I mean, for me, what this does is it raises productivity. We don't have enough people to do things. It lets you do things you couldn't do otherwise, right? So I'll give one example. We have a company, Bedrock Robotics, that I'm really excited about. These guys help build Waymo. You don't have Waymo here yet, do you?
Not yet.
So what you guys don't know what Waymo is just right. It's like these cars, self-driving cars, pretty amazing. You see them, it's kind of creepy, but it's working obviously really well. So these guys are now applying that to excavator machines. And it turns out that we've got excavator machines working as if they're driven by a professional with 5 to 10 years of experience, with no one in them, and we're using them on a few projects. It's really cool. One of them, I'm really excited about using them on quarries, by the way, if you think about that, because we can never find enough labor for quarries, and you can operate them 24/7 now. But what this does is it brings down the cost of that part of the construction, which actually creates more construction projects, because a lot of things don't quite pencil, and now they do pencil. And as you get more and more AI, you're going to have more economic activity, and you're going to have the people who are involved each able to create more value by being involved in these things. And so overall, it does like make each of us and each of the people working for us able to do more and able to earn more. And that's the whole point. I mean, there used to be, you look at people's last names, there used to be people who were Coopers and who were Smiths and who were Boyers and who were all sorts of jobs we don't have anymore because we changed our economy with the Industrial Revolution. But if we did still have those jobs, those were jobs that paid $5,000 a year. You don't want those jobs in the economy, right? So it's like, I think it's something that's very similar here.
How should we be thinking about, I mean, there's the policy side, and then there's obviously like the businesses who are trying to solve the problem on their own. It might have been what you were talking to my brother about on the education side. But if we don't, how do you know what to train people for if you're thinking out 5, 10 years? I mean, if you're an HVAC, please.
No, 5, 10 years, you got to train people to learn how to learn, right? I think this is what our education system needs to do better, by the way. So there's lots of new attempts at education. I'm very bullish on Joe Lamont and Alpha School. I have actually a podcast coming out with him next week. He's one of the most successful tech guys in the nation, and he's made tens of billions of dollars, and he's spending billions of dollars now. He's going to open thousands of schools around the country, and it turns out in 2 hours a day, you can use these AI systems to learn, to figure out what you don't know, teach you and push you ahead, and that's enough for kids to get in the top percentile. They can use the rest of the time for sports or life skills or whatever else parents want. So I think a big part of how his school works is you're teaching the kids to learn how to learn. So it's not as much about teachers at a certain point, because you actually learn much faster with the systems and with the kids asking questions and helping each other, which is pretty amazing, actually. So I think that framework is going to be a big shift for everyone. You have to learn how to learn. You can't just, you have to learn agency, right? You have to learn to yourself use it. I mean, with AI, we're each going to be able to build our own worlds, right? Like this AI is going to be like, if you want to start a company, you're going to have your ChatGPT CFO, your ChatGPT CRO. You're going to have all these things around you. We're going to need far fewer people like working with the agents. You can do a lot more. So it's all about what is the agency? What are you doing? You know?
What does it actually look like? You have what, 6 kids?
I have 6 young kids.
So
Yeah.
as you're thinking about raising them, I'm pre-kids myself, but like, how do you navigate that? What does learning how to learn look like when you don't know what they need, what they will be learning in the future?
Well, I mean, you need math and you need reading and you need a foundation in the values of our great society. Because if you don't give them that foundation, I think the AI world is going to be very dangerous for our culture and for our kids. And so for me, like I think if you're living in Britain right now and you're Christian, you should be proud to be British, and your kids should be proud to be Christian. And if you don't have that, then you're going to have something that's very dangerous, which is what you're seeing in Britain, by the way, in Europe, is they've lost their identity and they're being invaded by a different culture, and they can't stand up to it. They can't stand up to anything because they don't know who they are anymore. It's a very big problem. And so I think our kids, I think the AI world's only going to create more volatility in terms of change. And it's really important. Whatever your principles are, whatever your values are, I think it's really important to more deeply instill those in your kid, which for us means building our own schools and whatnot with our friends. But beyond that, when you say learning how to learn, like you should learn, I mean, Joe Lamont's Alpha School does this very well. Like if you're interested in a topic, you teach them how to go about learning about that topic, and you teach them that when they're curious about something, how to become an expert in it, how to solve things, how to build things in these areas yourself. I do think it's a repeatable skill. Is this energy to go after something, teach yourself about it, use it to create things, use it to do projects. Just having that ability is really important.
Sure. There's a lot of folks in this room who have kids and are thinking about that of, will there be interns and first years when they graduate college? How do you functionally or just how do you position your kids? How do you position maybe the next 5 years if someone's graduating to be a productive member of society, to have a job when they graduate, if that's really what they're
Yeah, this is like a similar question. I think it's really hard in general for like what helps your companies, what helps my companies. I need self-starters. I need people who are good communicators. I need people who deeply understand technology and computer science. I need people who are interested in particular verticals we're going after and are experts in them and able to work hard to get things done. But it's I think the most important thing is that ideally you can get them passionate about something. And get them to be expert on something. And if you're smart and passionate and high energy and expert on something, you can go work. People are going to want your help. So sure. I think it's still there.
And we'll go to Q&A in a minute. So if you have questions, start thinking about them. But one other question I've heard you kind of talk on this topic a bit. My father's actually in the room, and Michael. But
awesome.
He's probably like many others in this room, terrified of the future of AI. And where we're heading.
So a lot of people are more negative on it than positive in this case, you think? Yeah.
I think there are many people who are. And I think the unknown of where it's going, that it feels like it could go down a dystopian path. Obviously, I'm very bullish. I think it's going to create a lot of good for the world.
Yeah.
But what would you say to someone like that, to the folks who do feel that?
Yeah, no, I have a lot of sympathy. I think innovation and change, first of all, has always been something that's like naturally going to always be really scary. We can talk about the specifics of AI, but just again, going back to the first and second industrial revolution, imagine someone you're talking to in the 1870s and like for the last 10,000 years of human existence, 80 or 90% of us have been farmers and another 5 or 10% have been local manufacturers. And you explain that like more than half of each of those are going away. Potentially more than that. That like people. That's why there was a Luddite movement in the 1870s. We call Luddites like as a negative connotation now, but I mean, it kind of made sense to be a Luddite. Like, how could society possibly work if for 10,000 years we've all been doing this one thing and we're not going to be needed anymore, right? So you think about it, it's very scary. It's like you try to explain to someone in the 1870s the jobs you and I do today, they'd be like, "What the heck? That's not a job. That doesn't make any sense, right?" It's like, let alone other types of jobs that exist right now, right? So it's very scary. But I guess my high level take, a couple things. First, from the economic perspective, like we desperately need productivity growth. Like if this country does not get productivity growth in the next 5 or 10 years, our national debt is an existential problem. We have a bunch of people retiring that we've promised over $100 trillion of healthcare to that we cannot afford. In no world can we afford that. You do the math, you go look at it, that we're gonna hit a wall basically in like the late 2030s or 2040s, depending when you look at it, on all the healthcare promise costs. Like if we don't have growth, if we have growth, we're actually fine. It solves the national debt problem. If we don't, you know what happens in a world that's not growing quickly and where people are fighting over the things we can't afford? That's a very zero-sum, very populist, very nasty world. That is how you get wars, by the way, in the world as well, is when you don't have growth and you're fighting over a pie that's not growing. That's a nasty America. I don't want to live in that America. I want to live in an America that's growing. I don't want to live in the zero-sum, war of all against all. So first of all, we need growth. We need to embrace whatever's going to get us growth, for all those reasons. And then on top of that, there's a lot of people right now in a certain part of legacy industry, in a certain part of Silicon Valley, we call them doomers, who their incentive in their mind is to create fear. And we are all, the humans are built, our brains are built, we don't treat equally like a gain of 2x versus a loss of 50%. Like our brains are like wired to be afraid of change and to like worry about the loss much more than we think about the gain. I think first of all, just to know there's a lot of people, their job is to create that fear. And then second of all, I think it is important to talk and think about the gains that are going to come over the next 10 years, right? So if this works, it's going to make education, we've already seen examples, education is so much better. You're going to have the tutors are already getting really, really good. You're going to have amazing tutors for every kid, whether they're the most gifted kid to go way ahead. I've seen kids in 3rd grade doing high school work at Joe's gifted and talented thing, or the kids who are behind to automatically see where they're missing and help them get back ahead. So education is going to be huge. Healthcare, it's going to make so much better. There's so many diseases that we're finally able to understand and going to start to cure with this. There's so much advancement and research there. And it's just pretty much, you should think of any area of society, mental health coaching, there's just all this stuff that we're just getting way, way, way better at that we couldn't have done before with this intelligence we can harness. And so, it's basically everyone's going to have their own assistant to let them do things they couldn't have done before. So for me, there's just the upside is just so high, and we need the growth. And, I personally don't think, I think if you say, what am I most worried about? There are ways I think that people could use it to do things, to develop certain types. I don't want to talk about in too much detail, but certain types of weapons, or maybe in biology and et cetera. That is a little bit scary to me. So there are definitely risks, but I think we should take those risks very seriously. But I think the upside is just so massive. And by the way, if we were to try to stop it, China and others aren't going to stop, and we're just going to then it's a national security issue at that point. We're just going to not be the greatest country in the world. We're not going to be the wealthiest country. We're going to be way behind. To me, that's much more scary. So I definitely think we don't want to be the poor people who are not doing it.
There we go. We're not heading to singularity. We're good.
I'm not. I think the singularity thing is like way overstated, and I think the universe doesn't work in like explosions of exponentials. The universe works in S curves. So you get various pauses along the way. It's just that's the nature of the universe, and there's lots and lots of things that would stop this from being a singularity, is my view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of questions on any of these topics. We have a couple microphones around the room. If anyone wants to kick us off. But while we're waiting, you've made a lot of investments in Ohio.
It's a great state.
Biased, but
and a lot of the investments I make, they end up coming here too. So they must be smart people, huh? It seems like it's a great place to build.
I
love it.
I
love it. No, I'm actually old friends with Vivek, so I'm excited on the policy side here too. You already have a great state. There's lots of cool things to do. It's even more aggressive. So I'm very bullish. Yeah,
absolutely. Who wants to kick us off?
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Max. This is awesome. I think there are a lot of people in the room that work with materials, physical materials, whether that's construction or manufacturing. Can you talk a little bit about AI's connection with physical materials and how you see that developing, how quickly, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. This is an area that is a little more complicated, obviously. Like we're obviously starting with the paperwork and the digital things I mentioned. Bedrock is one example of construction where you're literally automating certain things there. Elon says his robots are coming and we're going to have a ton of them next year. I guess he only is giving them to friends at Tesla and around there first, but eventually we're going to be trying new manufacturing with them. I do think there's something, like if you try using ChatGPT to like, and other similar things to build things, build websites right now, it's much easier for a person just to express their idea and you get the website you want, which is like something that was really annoying and hard to do 10 or 20 years ago. You would have had to learn the code. And instead you just get the idea to work. I think it's similar in the physical world with these robots and with what AI does, where you're going to be able to very soon, much more easily, just intuitively explain what you want to happen with these tools without having to hire like quite as many experts, to set up a line or whatever. And you're still going to need experts, but it's going to be a lot easier to express it that way. I think the other thing that's interesting in the physical world, it just ties into how we're doing education and stuff too with AI, is that you can use it to manage things better. So I think what's going to happen in construction, for example, is you're probably going to have a lot of companies where people wear cameras and they watch what's going on. And you're going to be able to have a lot more accountability and incentives to keep people safe and to manage productivity on a construction team, which is, by the way, is very, very good for your top workers, because it turns out your top workers in construction, we think, probably work at least a few times as hard as your other workers. And there should be a differential in pay for that and incentive for that, and the other workers should be incentivized to move up to be as good as the top workers. This is all stuff that was way too hard to quantify exactly before, but you're gonna be able to start quantifying these things and rewarding people for harder work and letting them make more money for harder work and having others, be pushed. So I think things like that's gonna intersect the physical world, from AI very soon in the coming years.
Just a general open-ended question. What's your view of like what has to happen in AI compute for this future vision to come to life?
So yeah, no, it's an interesting question on this. Like the way we think of investing in AI, we think of like the six levels, right? So level 0 is energy infrastructure. Level 1 is the chips. Level 2 is data centers. Level 3 is the model companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, xAI, and, Facebook's Llama. Level 4 is software infrastructure, which is things like Palantir or Olama or et cetera. And level 5 is the actual services and apps companies. And most of what I'm doing at AVC and in my work is mostly level 4 and 5. We're building a software infrastructure, and we're actually building the actual applications in the economy for AI. Level 1 chips, NVIDIA has done amazing things. I think what NVIDIA has done already is probably going to be good enough. I am worried we have enough energy. I think it's a really important thing for policymakers on the energy side. I do think what's going to happen on the chip side is that right now, like all of the value of all of the non-NVIDIA, Intel, AMD companies is like 0.6%. And I think that 0.6% probably will go to 10 to 20% because there are specific types of chips that are just much more efficient. I do think NVIDIA is going to have some competition. I think you have something going public right now for $9 billion. You have a bunch of these things coming out. And so I don't know if it has to happen, but it just makes it a lot easier on the energy side if you have more efficient chips for these processes. You're going to see a lot of that.
Joe and Max, thank you. This has been a fascinating discussion. Joe, as you just referenced 8VC, and just would be curious to hear a bit about how you've thought about your ability to effectively scale the judgment and institutionalizing some of the pattern recognition that comes with continuing to build out your firm.
Yeah, this is always like a complicated thing to figure out. I mean, the number one, similar with Palantir and Adipar and the companies we've worked on, like Anduril, number one thing is talent and just having people who we feel are the very best. Our firm has 10 partners overall, and then you have a layer of principals and associates, then you have like operational teams. What we do is we actually build as well as invest. And so for our building, my partners who are doing that with me are former entrepreneurs, and the rule is they're only allowed to work on one thing at a time. And then we have a big talent apparatus around them. And so in our view, our view of the world in Silicon Valley is that the people who are building early stage with top talent have a kind of an unfair advantage as early stage investors as well, because by virtue of being a builder and working in that ecosystem, you kind of observe what else is going on. You know who the really talented people are. You see what's happening, and then sometimes things that you end up investing in based on that. And if you look at the angel portfolios, they're the best in the last 20 years. It's almost all our friends who have built the big companies. And so we try to stay in the flow on that. And then basically it's driven by the partners themselves. And then you can't scale beyond, like each partner in our firm can have at most 6 projects that they're invested in at once that they're working on, because we think 6 is like, just by experience for us, that's what works out. You don't want to do more than that. If you're going to do something new, you got to swap off an old one and replace yourself. It turns out there's like just need for a lot more capital in the areas we're working in right now, but we've actually kept our fund, funny enough, a lot smaller than a lot of our peers. So a lot of my peers have $5-6 billion funds. Our fund, I know it sounds silly because it's big, but it's still smaller than our peers because we like to do kind of earlier stage, which for us means like $20 to $50 million into each of the companies. It's all relative. The amount of venture capital used to be this like tiny part of global finance, and it's a bigger part now. And the amount of money needed is higher. So it's just a kind of a normal size fund for that part of the world.
Joe, right here.
There you are.
This is a popular table, apparently. Joe, you're my favorite guest on CNBC.
Oh, thank you.
You're fearless in your views, societal and political, which raises a really interesting question about when you're going to run for office.
Uh-oh. Is that the question?
Yes.
I was actually with Joe Kernan the other night at Jeb Bush's event in Maine. Actually, I spoke at his annual meeting this week too. It's one of those things this week. He's the guy that's from Squawk Box. He's quite a character. Listen, so Cicero, AVC is my main thing, and I'm the chairman of two things: the University of Austin, which I'm very proud of. It's new universities. Second class just started. I built it with Barry Weiss and Neil Ferguson, amazing people there, and then Cicero Institute. The Cicero Institute has teams in 30 states. And we get a lot done with other governors, a lot. We actually had 87 laws passed this year that we helped come up with and pushed with the C4 side, which is something I'm very proud of. And I don't want to talk too much about it right here, but basically I'm able to get a lot more done not being a competitive politician and to be friends with these guys. And so for now, that's my framework.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe. I'm an ex-Palantirian and now Heartland portfolio founder and
Amazing.
so craft. So honored to hear you talk. My question is kind of around data privacy for LLMs.
Yep.
So we sell to manufacturers and distributors, and we sell kind of like what you said, quoting, customer service, invoice automation.
Yep.
One of the big problems I hear about from folks here in the room and also outside the room is all these startups and service providers use some version of OpenAI, ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, or maybe Gemini from Google underneath the hood for their language model to automate some of these workflows. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of scared about my data going to OpenAI or ChatGPT because I don't want them using my data. So I'm going to go build something in-house privately.
Yep.
Do you have any response to that sort of thing? Because sounds like you're an advocate for off-the-shelf software.
Yeah, well, I think so. We talked about the different levels, right? And thank you for your help at Palantir, by the way. It's nice to connect. The level 4 software infrastructure, there's a lot being done there right now that allows you to do what you just said, right? So when we say off the shelf, I get it. I think for certain types of things, when privacy of something is very, very important to you, I think something like use Ollama and deploy your own Llama model is not that hard. It's hard, but it's not that hard. So I think there are certain use cases where you do get a few engineers, put something together and iterate on it and build it. I think most of the time for most things with legacy businesses, they're not the privacy and frameworks set up by these giant model companies. They're really not going to come and be able to take over your company just by virtue of you using it to save your money on workflows. But I think you're right for certain things. Deploy your own model, but again, there's a lot of software for doing that as well, so I don't think it's too hard.
Joe, thanks for the great insights. I'd love to hear your assessment of the state of the M&A markets as it relates to venture capital exits. It's been a little up and down since 2020, so I'd love to get your take on that, and I'm specifically curious if you're facing any headwinds with any of your portfolio.
Yeah, well, no, it's a great question, and people that I tend to be more aligned with are running the FTC now. Lena Khan was a major problem. She just basically thought all mergers were bad, which obviously was terrible for being able to sell things and take money to them, build new things in the space. And so I think the FTC's generally gone the right way, but you're right, it's not perfect on this. And a lot of us think that the IPO markets are really opening up. You've seen some very strong IPOs. A lot of my friends, obviously, I was just with Secretary Bessent yesterday, and a bunch of these guys who are on the Fed board as well. Trump just got his Steve Moran on it. A few more are going to come soon. And I think it's pretty obvious that the incentive is politics aside, they want things to do well next year before the midterms, unfortunately. But even beyond that, I do think things are opening up with the AI growth. And so a lot of us are expecting, right now M&A is heated up a little bit, but it's still a little slower. It's allowed again. A lot of us are expecting a very hot market next year. We'll see what happens, but I would not be surprised given. And the reason I say that, by the way, is there's a lot of these AI companies I'm involved in that are growing really quickly and are great businesses. And I think people are going to be very excited. The retail bid on this is going to be very strong, as it should be, because these are great things to get into. And then I'm not talking about the model companies because I have no idea what OpenAI is worth. It's losing an insane amount of money. Argue here if these are commodities or what they're worth, but there's a lot of these what I'm calling level 4 and 5 companies that are very clearly working in very specific areas of the economy. And I just think it's going to be a very strong wave of investment next year that hopefully a lot go public.
Hey, Joe. Alex Husted back here. I was at the Palmer event last night with Barry Weiss, so sad to miss you.
Oh, nice.
I think all of us in this room are pretty optimistic about Columbus, about Ohio. Erebor is going to be here. You're backing Fro's company. Max is raising Fund 3. You should definitely commit to Fund 3. Sorry to jump the gun on Max. What do you see your role here in Columbus or in Ohio? I mean, are there a couple other acts that haven't been announced? I mean, do you want to invest a little bit more time and energy here in Columbus?
Listen, yeah, no, I'm really excited that the Erebor and Fro are building here, and that obviously Anduril is building here. I'd like more of our defense companies to do things here as well. So I'm a fan of Columbus. I think this is my first time visiting. Just stopping through today. I have to get home to put the kids to bed. Otherwise, I'd be here longer tonight. But I guess this is a great place. Clearly a great place to build. I'm clearly going to be learning a lot more about it through my companies that are here and seeing the types of talent they get. And my job right now is to help those companies. So my role right now is the companies and help them as much as possible. And hopefully by building out offices and having our talent people here and doing more here, we learn more about doing business in Ohio. I do think with my friend becoming governor and in our policy work trying to be helpful here too, it'll be an excuse to visit here more both for business and policy. So I'm excited to figure out what else to build here with you guys. There's a lot more happening in like the physical world thanks to the robotics AI stuff that's happening. And that's still very nascent. But I really could see Columbus being a very big player in that too. And basically, we need to learn from you guys about how a lot of these parts of the industrial base work. I'm a computer scientist who pretends on TV to understand how to build things in the real world. I'm still learning, so would love to learn from you guys and partner more there.
On that topic, before the next question, how can we be helpful? I mean, you've been so kind to come out here and to visit and speak. With what you are doing with the audience that we have, how can we be helpful?
Thanks. Well, let's make sure we invest in some things together and make some money. That'd be fun.
Stack. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate it. No, it's and I think let's find some more great talent for the companies we're building here, and I'd love to learn the ecosystem. So let's spend some time on that.
Absolutely. Any others? Joe, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Max.